Okay, so we saw in the first one, we saw this year that these mystical seed events start taking place in Israel. It's really the beginning of the end times as we know it. And there's more than I could say, and you'll see, but it all begins. So now what happens with Jubilee? So let's count 50 years.
Yes.
And everybody can do this, at home with me, so you can check it out for yourself. 1867, add 50 years. What is the 50th year? The 50th year comes out to the year, pinpoints 1917, next year of Jubilee. Now what happens?
Yes.
God is going to take these things that were done, almost in the spirit, but secret, and it's from the world, and it's going to explode on the world stage. Now, remember, who has the land? Who has the land? It's the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, Muslim. The land of Israel has been in Muslim hands for most of 2,000 years. The Romans drove the Jews out, and then came the next power. So now it's the Ottoman Turkish Empire. They've had it since the time of around Columbus. That's how long they had the land. Around the time of Martin Luther, they've had that land. So they're not going to give it up. I mean, there's no way they're going to say, hey, let's bless the Jewish people that they can have a nation in our empire. Not going to happen. But the Bible says, God says, before Messiah can come again, before the end can come, Israel will be a nation again by the hand of God. Even though it's hopeless, even though Jewish people had no power in the land whatsoever. They start returning after Mark Twain. Handfuls start trying to. They look at the land; it's all a desert. How do we? They don't even know how to farm. They're trying to learn how to farm. So it's happening, scattering. But the Ottoman Empire is not for this. So and they try to actually stop it if they can. But so here's what happens. God is in charge of everything. What happens, and he works through what happens in the world. Not that he's causing things, necessarily the bad things that men do, but he works through the bad things that men do. What happens is the Archduke in Europe gets assassinated. One nation declares war on the other one. Russia declares war. France declares war. England declares war. Everybody declares war. First World War in world history. Okay, but through this world war, God is actually going to cause everything from the prophecy and from these mysteries to come true. So what happens? You have the Ottoman Empire gets on one side of the war. That's with the Germans and the rest. On the other side, you have Great Britain. Britain had just had a revival. In the 19th century, revival. They had a lot of people who loved the Jewish people now and who are reading prophecy. Before, America is now the center of that, but it was England before that. English, greatest empire in the world to that time. But you have people, God bless them with this revival, and you have people reading about the Jewish people and believing that God is going to restore them because that's what the Bible says. So here's what happens. So here you have Britain, you have the Ottoman Empire. Now at the same time, you have the war. Okay, so kingdoms are going to be shaken, but God gave a word, and the Jubilee and Mystery pinpoints 1917, something's going to happen that has to be linked to restoration, Jubilee, coming home. Okay, so now you have that. Let me tell you about how God uses everything. People don't realize, but God used Christians for Israel to come back into the world. God blessed believers in key places that they were key in Israel coming back in the world. But he also used Jewish people. There's a man called Chaim Weizmann. You don't have to. You may have heard of him. You may not have. But he was a chemist, a Jewish chemist. He ends up moving to England. He becomes a professor of chemistry in Manchester. Just so happens that one of the representatives in that place is a man called Arthur Balfour. Balfour is a Christian, loves the Lord, and meets Weizmann. Weizmann tells him about the dream of Israel. And so Balfour becomes a lover of Israel and has a dream for it. But Balfour, for his whole life, is a born-again Christian. He was prime minister at one point, but now he's a prime minister. So now here's what happens. When the war comes, they need somebody to help with the England's British, their war effort with the chemical department, their lab. So they take Weizmann because Weizmann knows Balfour. So he works under a guy called David Lloyd George. He's the head of the munitions. So God just happens to be putting all these puzzle pieces together. And then what happens? We're approaching the year of Jubilee, 1917. So as 1916 ends, you have a government in England that is not in favor of giving the land to the Jewish people. And so what happens is, just as the year is ending, as the Jubilee year is about to come, their government collapses. And all of a sudden, the one raised to become the new prime minister is David Lloyd George, raised on the Bible, and a friend of Chaim Weizmann, and he appoints Arthur Balfour as his foreign minister. So just as the Jubilean year comes in, God raises up the two people who are for Israel, and so he causes kingdoms to rise and governments to rise and fall. And they issue in that year of Jubilee comes forth the Balfour Declaration. It is the first declaration since ancient times to bless Israel and to tell Israel, what it says is, it says the government of England is we are going to give the land of Israel for a national home for the Jewish people. After 2,000 years, it's the first government that's in favor of the Jewish people, the first government. And so they say we're going to bless. So Jubilee, everyone shall return home. What happens to Jubilee? You get your land back. You get your home. You get your thing you lost. So God causes this decree to go forth to the world that has actually changed history. So, but it all happens in the year of Jubilee. There's only one problem. The British Empire doesn't have the land. The Ottoman Empire does. But all of a sudden, in the year of Jubilee, the Ottoman Empire begins to crumble. Now, and all of a sudden, another Christian, who didn't want to go into the army, but his name is Edmund Allenby, General Allenby, begins leading the troops to Israel. And so in the year of Jubilee, what does it say? What happens in Jubilee? You get back to your land, and the people who occupy your land have to get off your property. Well, after 2,000 years, the enemy hostile occupation, the Ottoman Empire begins fleeing the land. Year of Jubilee. First time in 2,000 years that the hostile occupation, since the time that Jesus prophesied, happens in the year of Jubilee. But now, a mystery. There's a number of the end. One of the chapters in the book is the number of mysteries, the number of the end. You read the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel, at the end, it talks about it gives a number. And it says, this is the number when basically it's talking about the enemy will occupy Jerusalem, the sacrifices will cease. It talks about the end times. But the number, it says, it gives the number 1335. It says, blessed is he who waits to that time, that day. It says that what happens? The occupier of Jerusalem is going to have to flee. In that year, 1335, okay? You got that, 1335 days. But so that's a number. Now it was days, but also it's a number, 1335. 1335 is the number when the occupation of Israel has to end. The occupation of Jerusalem has to end. All of a sudden, the number 1335 starts appearing in the land of Israel, starts appearing in the Middle East, starts appearing in the Arab world. It starts appearing on coins, 1335. The number of when the occupation has to end, 1335, all over the Arab world, all over the Middle East starts appearing. When? It appears in the year 1917, year of Jubilee. Starts appearing all over. Why? Because it turns out that on the Muslim calendar, 1917 was the year 1335, the number of Daniel, when the occupier has to leave.
Oh, man.
So it appears in the land at the exact time.
It's amazing. Just, you better hold on. This is just the beginning.